Thanks for being here again today. Exciting week this week. After a bye week last week, traveling up to a short trip up to Charleston Southern, playing at their place, I think, for the first time in the history of the matchup. Should be a exciting environment up there. I know that their team will be ready to play, and they're off to a great start again this year, coming off a 10-win season last year. 3-0 entering this ball game. Fortunate to have all those games at home, so they're very accustomed to that environment so far this year. I feel like maybe the best Charleston Southern team that they've had. Reyes, 1,000-yard rusher, returning from last year. Brown, transfer from UAB, who was freshman of the year in Conference USA, his freshman year at UAB. Obviously two very good skill kids there on offense, but really overall a fairly veteran roster. A lot of juniors and seniors in the two deep, both sides of the football, averaging over 35 points a game, giving up less than 10 points a game. So, formidable opponent we're facing Saturday, and looking forward to that matchup. I have with me today senior defensive lineman Cam Mobley and senior slot back Jake Stinson. These two guys have really been outstanding for us ever since we got here. First off, is they're both outstanding young men, and just a true pleasure to be around on a daily basis, which always helps in just enjoying the people you're with. But also very good football players. Both are off to good seasons so far. I think Jake, I don't know your stats personally, but he's averaging pretty good clip on yards per carry. The one thing that you probably don't notice is he's probably maybe our best blocker at the slot back position. And then Cam has really had a good start to the year in our interior defensive line, and played pretty well 2 weeks ago against Florida State. So with all that being said, any questions for me or either of the two players?
Coach, Charleston Southern has used 3 quarterbacks. How do they platoon them? What situations have you seen?
Well, for the most part, for Brown, he's the starter, and I don't think there's any controversy there. The backup number 10, who was a starter last year, he comes in the third series against Campbell. He came in the third series, the first half and the second half, and then the third kid they brought in against Campbell came in there towards the end. But they are running a variation of the same offense that we run, triple option offense. They're running out of the shotgun. Anytime that you're running an offense where you have a running quarterback, you obviously have to have more than one, and you have to have more than one that's prepared to play. And so I think that's probably what you're seeing from them there, not any kind of a controversy or anything. Just, they had an opportunity to get those other guys some work, so they did.
Mike, you matched up with Jamie when he was at North Greenville and you were at Lenore Ryan. How did those games go? What's sort of his trademark as a coach? What can you expect from a team that he coaches?
Well, to be honest, our teams at Lenore Ryan and North Greenville, I think most people that played against us would say that the teams were fairly similar in that their style of play. His defenses are always very, very aggressive, very hard-nosed, very good against the run, play with a lot of emotion. Offensively, they've always been able to run the football effectively. I have tremendous respect for the job he did at North Greenville and respect for the job he's done there at Charleston Southern. His staff, they coach with a lot of energy. They do a great job in recruiting. Just look at the skill that we're going to play against on Saturday, and they've done a good job just in the 2 years they've been there with that roster. So, I think it's a pretty good rivalry not only between the two schools, but probably between the two staffs because we're so much alike.
Mike, what did you guys focus on during the open day?
Probably twofold. Number one, with still a fairly young roster overall, we're still doing a lot of work fundamentally with some of the younger kids coming along. And then schematically, there's a couple things we worked on last week that we'll use on down the road throughout the season. And then we also, the third thing was we began preparation for Charleston Southern last week. So had a good week of practice. Came out completely healthy, so no issues there. So ready to start real game preparation today, with pretty heavy practice here on Tuesday going into Saturday.
When I talked to Jamie this morning, he was talking about the difference between the teams you've played and what they've played so far. How might that play in the Citadel's favor on
Well,
Saturday?
no matter who we've played, you play who's on your schedule. And Jamie, that schedule was probably made before Jamie ever got there, just like this schedule was made before I ever got here. So, you play who's on your schedule. I do think, from their standpoint, they played a very good Newberry team that most people maybe in the FCS level don't understand that Newberry team would be a good SoCon team. It would be a good Big South team. So that's a good quality win for them there. So the biggest thing I take on their end is they're 3-0. They've got a lot of confidence. They're coming off a very good season last year. On our end, we've played against, one of the better FCS teams in the country in Coastal Carolina. I think they're ranked 5th in the country this year or this week. And then, arguably the best team in the nation. The result of that is, we are 0-2, but I do think that we've improved from week 1 to week 2. I do think we've played against a lot of speed and a lot of size. So it's not like we're going to go out and see anything that we have not seen before, from an athletic standpoint. As to if there's an advantage one way or another, I don't know, because I can see advantages on both sides.
Cam and Jake, can you talk about, losing to Charleston Southern last year and how that plays into your mindset, your determination this year to make up for that?
Personally, it's big for me this year because the last touchdown they scored that ultimately put them on the win, they actually ran the ball through my gap responsibility. So I've been hurting from that for about a year now. So I'm definitely looking at a chance to get a chance to redeem myself. And I like playing these guys anyway. It's always a tough game. And me, Jake, all of us, we all love to compete. So it's just exciting.
Yeah, the loss from last year has been in the back of our mind since last year's game, heartbreaking loss. So, I'm excited to go up North Charleston and play them.
Just for the players, fellas, the first game there was a lot of turnovers, there was a lot of penalties, and the last game against FSU, a much harder team, the execution was unbelievable. You guys were mentally in the game, and I think the performance was so much higher. That's not coaching, that's execution. What did you all do differently in the FSU game that you're going to sustain upon this game to cut out those kind of errors that were made in the first game?
Well, I think it does come back to coaching somewhat. Our staff did a really great job of helping us understand what things we did wrong in the Coastal Carolina game. There were a lot of things that I didn't even realize we were doing incorrectly during the game that after we sat down with our coaches and got a chance to understand, were very easy to clear up. And as far as going into this week, we basically can rely on the same principle. As a team, we're very receptive to what the coaches have to tell us, and so we trust them and they get the job done for us.
Yeah, adding on to that, I feel like it's a big deal with the coaching. They preach ball security and discipline. After the first game, we had those 2 personal fouls that really hurt us also. So we learned after that, and we also learned from last year's loss, the turnovers killed us. So we know we can't have that. So we just know if we hold on to the ball and don't get penalties and things fall our way, good things will happen.
Mike, how much do you look at last year's game tape for this game?
We looked at it this summer, looked at it again this past week, and certainly it's something that's valuable to us. That being said, it's a different year. Who knows? They showed, I think, 3 or 4 different fronts last year against the Citadel, which really caused some problems from a schematic standpoint. So, we've prepared for about everything that you can prepare for. That being said, they may come out and play one front. Who knows how each team is going to adjust going into this year's game. But and the other thing is, and this is the thing, looking at them in that game last year and then looking at them late in the year against Coastal Carolina and some of those teams, it was a different ball club too. They were not as efficient in that game last year against the Citadel as what they were late in the year. Late in the year, they were a darn good football team playing very, very well because it wasn't week one, week one of that staff. And so, we looked at last year's film, but, probably we concentrated a little bit more on late season games and then obviously their first 3 games this year.